person he performs or he forgets an action and then he remembers, then if he has to repeat that or to perform that action before he moves on to the next one, or he has to perform sujood or sahwi. But what if he's in congregation, let's say, and he forgets to say Rabbana wa lakal hamd?
Then the imam carries the mistake. So then the imam, he praying behind the imam, that if doesn't the mistake is carried on to meaning there's no mistake upon you then. Then the imam is the prayer of the imam is sufficient for the person.
So that's with any of the wajibat?
Yeah, that's with any of the wajibat. But if he misses one of the rukn, then he has to repeat the rak'ah again. So after the imam has finished, then he stands up and he prays that rak'ah again. Because the arkan, they're from the fundamental core pillars of the prayer. They cannot be missed out in any situation.
But you said tomorrow if you're in congregation and at the start of the prayer, it should be like Surah Fatiha or Hajj and another. Say if the imam's too quick and you're still reciting and it goes into the
then there's a short-term solution and there's a long-term solution. The short-term solution is that you recite from Surah Al-Fatiha what you are able to do so. And then let's say if the imam went into ruku, then he carries the sin and he carries the responsibility. That's his sin. But the long-term solution is for the imam to be advised. And if the imam continues like this, then he shouldn't pray behind him. So if the imam has been advised a number of times and he's still praying very, very quickly, then it's better to pray behind another imam or in another masjid in which you can pray, so you can recite Surah Al-Fatiha behind him. And not only Surah Al-Fatiha, because at-tama'nina, being calm in the prayer, not rushing the prayer, this is also from the pillars of the prayer like Surah Al-Fatiha is. So let's say if you had an imam and he goes from ruku to standing to sujood and it's all done quickly in one motion like some of the imams do, then the imam should be advised a number of times and you should have patience with him in advising him and have wisdom and good words and showing him respect. But if he continues, then pray with another imam or another place.
You know, as you mentioned, that if you miss one of the rakat, that the rakat is invalid.
The rakat is invalid,
If you do an extra one by accident, then what's the implication of that?
Then you do sujood sahu. Because sujood sahu is done for an addition as well as something which is being left once. And sujood sahu.
What's the procedure for that?
Sujood sahu. So sujood sahu are two sujoods which a person does in order to cover anything which he forgot, he left out in the salah. In yesterday's lesson we said that the actions of the salah are three types. The arkan, well let's say four types. The shurut, the arkan, the wajibat and the sunnah. The shurut are conditions which you have to fulfill before the salah. So for example, being in a state of wudu, you have to fulfill this before the salah starts. So if you didn't make wudu and then you prayed, there's no sujood sahu because you haven't prayed. You just have to repeat the prayer again. Or if a person prayed in a direction other than the qibla and he knew that this is not the way of the qibla, there's no sujood sahu because you haven't fulfilled one of the conditions. So sujood sahu does not apply to the conditions. The second action are the arkan. The arkan, there are 14 of them which we mentioned yesterday. They are those actions that if you leave it out intentionally or forgetfully, then that rak'ah is invalid. And also there is no sujood sahu. So you have to simply make up the rak'ah again. Once you finish the prayer and you remember, subhanAllah, I didn't do one sujood, then you say one more rak'ah again and then you make taslim. And the sunan are recommended actions. So if you don't do them, there's no sin, the prayer is still valid but your reward is less. So there's no sujood sahu for missing out one of the sunnah. So therefore, when do you have to perform sujood sahu? When you leave one of the wajibat out of forgetfulness. So if you miss one of the wajibat and you do the sujood sahu, then you don't need to repeat the rak'ah again. Your sujood sahu, this is sufficient for the wajib which you left out. How does a person make or do sujood sahu? Either before taslim or after taslim, a person makes two sujood. And that's it. And a person does sujood sahu for three reasons. Either something you have added to the prayer, like Ishaq asked, you might add something to the prayer. What do? You just make sujood sahu. or you have left something out from the prayer if it is from the wajibat, then you make sujood sahu. Or if there is a shak, if there is a doubt. So a person wasn't sure, this wajib, did I do it or did I not do it, then you also make sujood sahu. Do you make sujood sahu before the taslim or after the taslim? The ulama differed. So some of the ulama, they said that if you leave a wajib out, then you make sujood sahu before the taslim. And if you add something to the prayer, then you make sujood sahu after the taslim. And some of the ulama, they said it does not matter. As long as you make sujood sahu, whether it's before taslim or after taslim. And sujood sahu, it is like any other sujood. Meaning it's done in the same way, and the same tasbih, it says Subhana Rabbiyal A'la, and so on and so forth. If a person has to pray in a school, and there are pictures or displays and books that contain pictures with the eyes, is the prayer still valid? So, praying in a place in which there are pictures, this is from the makruhat. This is from the disliked actions. The prayer is still valid, but it is disliked for a person to pray in that room for two reasons. The first reason, because it will distract that person. And the second reason, even though we don't say these pictures are shirk, but there may be a possible avenue to shirk later on. So for both of these reasons, it is disliked for a person to pray in that room. So what does the person do? Either a person can try to find another room. If cannot find another room, then prays in that room but tries to cover those pictures. And if a person cannot do that because it's impractical, like a person praying in a classroom and there's many pictures and many books, so you cannot cover the books, or it's not permitted for you to do so, then in that situation a person prays and there is no sin upon a person. And Allah said in the Quran, فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَسْتَطَعْتُمْ, fear Allah as much as you are able to do so. So if you are able to pray in another room, alhamdulillah. If you cannot pray in that room but you can cover those pictures, alhamdulillah. And if you can't cover those pictures, and then that's the best you can do, then there is no sin upon a person.
Brother, you mentioned there's that preferred time for a necessity time. So, for example, what equates to be a necessity? Because I work sometimes, you can't make the earlier time due to work reasons. Would that basically be okay, preferred for me to delay master?
Yeah, so if a person is able to, meaning he doesn't have any obligations like work or like study or like a surgery or an operation or anything like that, then pray in the earlier time. But if something is going to delay and you can't get out of it, like an exam, like work hours, then you pray in the latter time.
Another question regarding, you said at the meeting of the first lesson about the age of children, and it's upon the parents at the age of 7, then again at the age of 10. And so what would a parent do, for example, as a parent myself, I get them ready, get them up for wuzu, tell them to pray namaz. What if they miss the arkan in the namaz or something like that? Is that the sin's going to be on the parents for them not praying the namaz properly?
If the parent was negligent in educating the child. So it's not enough for you to just say to your child, get up and pray. You have to also teach him the salah. Now, teaching him the salah, obviously, there's various ways for it to be done. One of the ways that we do it is like these types of lectures, you bring your children with you, so they learn. Also, the masajid, they have the madrasa, they have the teacher who teaches the children to pray. Also, you physically teaching the child to pray. And there's an important point here, a subtle point, many parents miss this out when it comes to giving a tarbiyah. We think that it's enough for us to send our children to the madrasa in the masjid, and there he's going to learn his prayer and his Surah Al-Fatiha, and that's my obligation done. But you have to remember that it isn't only an obligation, but it's an honor for you as well. So you as a father, why should the imam of the masjid have the honor of teaching your child Surah Al-Fatiha? You should think that I want to have the honor of teaching my own child Surah Al-Fatiha before the imam teaches him. I should be the one. So when the child grows up, who taught you the salah? Either you can say, look, my father, my mother taught me the salah at home, or you can say, no, my mum and dad didn't teach him, they just used to send me to the madrasa, and I used to learn with the imam. So not only should we see it as a burden, but we should see it as an honor. That I don't want anybody else to have the honor of teaching my own child Surah Al-Fatiha or the prayer and like that. So when we talk about, when the Prophet said, Murru abna'ukum bis-salah wa hum abna' as-sab'a, order your children to pray the salah and they are 7 years old. This means order them and teach them and educate them. And then obviously discipline them upon it.
Is there a difference in performing salah for men and women? Are you going to sujood?
Generally speaking, the commands of the Quran and the Sunnah, they apply to both the men and the women the same. So that's the general rule. The asl, the base rule is that any command which comes in the Quran and the Sunnah, generally speaking, it applies to the men and the women in the same way. Unless we have an evidence which specifies that no, the women have to do this and the men have to do that, then we say it is different. So this is the base rule. When it comes to the salah, the women make the same takbir, the women recite the same surah al-Fatiha, they place their hands in the same place, the same ruku, the same sujood, unless we have an evidence which specifies them. So for example, the Prophet ﷺ, when it comes to informing the imam that he has made a mistake, he said, as for the men, they make a tasbih, they say subhanallah out aloud. As for the women, a safqa, they hold their hand like this to notify the imam that he has made a mistake. So here now there is an evidence which specifies the women to do something and the men to do something. Also when it comes to the awrah, covering of the awrah in the salah, the Prophet specified the awrah of the women to be something else now and the awrah of the men to be something else. Also when it comes to, for example, al-imama, the woman stands in the front row with the women if she's leading other women. As for the man, then he stands in front of the front row. So these exceptions, there's an evidence for them. The other exceptions, there's no evidence for them.
With the intention before salah, you have some people who recite out the intention.
Yeah. Al-Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he said, "An-niyya mahalluha al-qalb wa talaffuz biha bid'ah." That the intention is places in the heart. And to verbalize the intention is an innovation. Because the Prophet ﷺ and his companions, they never did this. So, and the same for every other act of worship. So when you make wudu, you have to have the niyyah you're making wudu. But does anybody stop and say the niyyah upon the tongue before wudu? When you fast, you have to have the niyyah that I'm fasting this fast for the sake of Allah because it is Ramadan. But nobody says the niyyah before the fast. Even when it comes to Hajj, your niyyah is in the heart. As for Allahumma labbaik bil Hajj wal Umrah, this is a talbiyah. And this is like saying Allahu Akbar for the salah. So the niyyah in every single ibadat is always in the heart.
Question upon the niyyah for the Ramadan. It's all on the calendars. I've read it as a kid,
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not supposed to do that.
No, that's a dua, that's not the niyyah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a dua. The niyyah is the intention which is in your heart. Even the worldly affairs, when you're going to, for example, get into your car, you have an intention to drive the car, but do you stop and say your intention out loud? No, it's in your mind. So when we say you have to have the niyyah in your mind for the salah, what does this mean? This means that when you are walking to the salah, you know in your mind that I'm going to the salah, I'm going to pray the dhuhr, I'm going to the masjid. Not that before the salah you have to stop and even in your mind you have to say something. The niyyah is there to differentiate between the ibadat and the adat. This is why the niyyah is there. Adat, these are the adat of your dunya routines. The ibadat is the action which you are doing for the sake of Allah. So if somebody, for example, takes a shower, the same shower with the same water, if he takes it because he's come from the gym or he's getting ready for work, this is from his adat. If he takes this shower with the intention that this is ghusl, and with this shower I'm going to pray my salah, I'm going to recite the Quran, I'm going to make tawaf, or so on and so forth, now it becomes ibadah. So the niyyah is there for two main objectives. To differentiate between adat and ibadat, like I mentioned, and to differentiate between different types of ibadat. So a person can pray 2 raka'at. What differentiates whether these 2 raka'at are the fard of fajr or the sunnah nafil of fajr? What differentiates his niyyah? And this is why the niyyah is there. It's just something which you have in mind, which is this prayer which I'm about to pray in 5 minutes. I'm going to the masjid, I'm praying for the sake of Allah, it is dhuhr, it is asr, you have that in your mind. It isn't a special statement which you have to verbalize. Now, the dua is different. The du'as and the takbirat And the talbiyah, labbaik Allahumma labbaik, this is not niyyah. It's not niyyah. When you make a dhabh, for example, of the animal, Bismillah. When you lower the person to the grave, Bismillah ala millati Rasulullah, you say all this. This is not niyyah. This is just a dua. Before you eat, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, this is just a dua. Your niyyah is always in your heart. Your niyyah precedes the dua and everything else.
Sorry, I've asked a lot of questions about one when you said in the first lesson about shudu, you said that your one general condition for acceptance that all your actions should be halal, so your food should be halal, your earning should be halal, and everything else. Right? Okay. So, so if you, for example, if you work in an environment where there's an alcohol or anything like that, right? Your earnings are not. Will that count? Will that count as a general? So, say for example, you work in Asda or Tesco.
Yeah, when the ulama, working in Asda or Tesco, like, I don't want to give a ruling about a specific situation. That's a different thing. Because it's possible that person might work in Asda, but he never touches the alcohol, he never sells it. He works, for example, on the bread or the bakery or the toiletries. So those scenarios have specific answers and they have to be investigated. When the ulama talk about your actions not being accepted if your income isn't halal, what they mean by this is you might pray salah and the salah is valid. So even if there is a person, let's say, A'udhu Billah, he's dealing in riba, right? And he prays. His prayer is still valid. He doesn't have to repeat dhuhr again. He's prayed his dhuhr. But the du'as which he made in his prayer, are they going to be accepted by Allah? Maybe not, because of the riba or the haram which he is dealing with. So that's where the difference is.
One more question. In terms of people wearing, like moisturizers or something like that in the salah, and they might have alcohol, will that invalidate the salah?
Some of the ulama, they mention that alcohol is impure from the najasat. But the correct opinion amongst the fuqaha is that alcohol is haram to drink or to sell or to buy or to ferment, but it isn't from the najasat. So something being haram, it doesn't always mean that it is a najasat. And something being from the najasat doesn't necessarily mean that it is haram. So having, let's say, perfume which has alcohol in it, it isn't from the najasat.
So you can use
it. And they give a number of evidences for that. The major evidence is the Prophet ﷺ in Al-Madinah, when alcohol was finally made haram, because alcohol was made haram in 3 stages. The first stage, the believers were advised to stay away from it, because it is from Amalu Shaitan, it's from the action. Stay away from it as much as you can do so. The believers were discouraged from alcohol. The next stage was, do not approach the masjid and you have drunk alcohol. So alcohol was still permitted, disliked. It wasn't haram, but you couldn't come anywhere near the masjid and a person was drinking alcohol. And then the third level came, in which alcohol is totally forbidden. Not allowed for anybody to drink or sell or buy or have anything to do with alcohol. The narrators, they mention that when these ayat were revealed, some of the companions who had a glass of alcohol, they lifted it, they poured it outside. And also the streets of Medina became full of alcohol which is being thrown and discarded outside. The fuqaha, they say, if alcohol was najas, then it would not have been permitted for the Sahaba to throw their alcohol on the streets outside. Because people who walk to the salah, the men and the women, their clothes would touch that alcohol. So for this reason they say it is haram, but it is not najas. So if, hypothetically, if a person, some alcohol touched his clothing, he can still pray in it. The prayer is still valid. Also, the semen of a person. So, al-mani, semen, this is, it necessitates a ghusl, but in of itself, it is not najas, in of itself. And the evidence of this is the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha. She said that sometimes she would wash the semen from the clothing of the Prophet, and sometimes kuntu afrukuhu farkan. Sometimes I would scrub it off with my fingers, because in those times there was a shortage of water and so on and so forth. So had it been najas, then merely scraping it off with the fingers of the hands would not be enough. Rather, you will have to wash it with water. So al-mani, this is, it necessitates ghusl, but it is not najas. So if, hypothetically speaking, a person prayed and hypothetically he had some najas on his garment, the prayer is still valid.
You mentioned what food is being served, for example, Maghrib time. And I came across a hadith where he says, don't rush when you're eating food. But what about if it's almost time for Isha that's going to come in? And it's Maghrib, Maghrib.
When the ulamas, when the Prophet ﷺ, when he said, La salata bi hadratin ta'am, there is no prayer when the food is prepared. And the fuqaha, they mention certain guidelines. So one of the guidelines is that the person, he desires the food. Because what is the illah, what is the reason behind a person staying away from prayer when the food is being served? That his mind will be distracted. So if his mind is not going to be distracted because he's full up, even if there's food in front of him, then he is okay to pray. So the ulama, they mention that if a person is desiring the food and then the food is being served, then it's better for him to eat because he will be distracted. Also, if there's time for the person to pray. But if he's going to miss the prayer and the time is going to leave because of the food, then he has to fulfill the obligation. And always, look, this is the importance of understanding the principles. When you have an obligation, and this obligation is going to contradict something which is mustahab, the obligation always comes first and mustahab comes after. So it is an obligation for a person to pray in the correct time. It is recommended for a person that food is being served, you eat and then you pray later. So now, if you're going to miss the prayer, and that's an obligation, or you're going to miss the mustahab, which is eating the food first, what do? We fulfill the obligation even if we don't fulfill the mustahab. Okay, I think food is being served in a couple of minutes.